Hello, I'm Rob Sweeney, and I'm the author of You're Not Just a Diagnosis, Using Trauma-Informed Techniques to Create Your Best Life. And I want to talk to you today about what is trauma-informed, because it seems to be a misconception that what that means is I have to tell everybody what my trauma was. That means they're better informed and then they'll treat me better. That's not what that means. First of all, if you've had a traumatic experience, the most important thing in the way you manage that trauma is to be safe. And telling everybody the trauma you've had as a way of getting them to treat you better is not necessarily safe. It may be in certain relationships and certain circumstances the best way to get some sort of understanding between you about how you should be treated. But for most cases, what they need to know is that you've had a traumatic experience. Because in general terms, trauma-informed treatment can follow the same basic rules and the same basic concepts to help most people who've gone through trauma. And in fact, when we look at them, we'll find that if persons who have some idea of what it means to treat a person with trauma use this for everyone benefits. To put it bluntly, don't be a dick, and you'll be a better person dealing with people who've had trauma. Some sort of an experience that hits both the body and the mind in a way that it's difficult to move past that experience and feel safe and secure and in control in your world. We'll talk about it more when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, specifically PTSD. But in general terms, a person who's had a traumatic experience has found that it has changed their definition of their world, making it less understandable and less safe, and their definition of who they are and how they fit in that world, making themselves feel less noticed, less safe, less important. So part of trauma-informed treatment that makes sense is to allow people who are traumatized to have a little more understanding of what's going on in the world, a little more control, and a sense of they themselves are important, safe, and part of what's going on. That being said, what are the steps for trauma-informed treatment? The Wisconsin Department of Health Services describes trauma-informed care with 5 very specific elements that pretty much fit being a good manager, being a good parent, being a good friend. The first step is to make sure everybody feels safe. And you'll see this in very dramatic ways in businesses right now. There are metal detectors in courthouses and in schools because there have been moments in the past when it wasn't safe to be in the courthouse or in school. People got hurt there. And so the first step in managing those places well was to create a safe barrier so that you could actually come to work, go to school, and feel like it's an okay place. It's safe. And that's the primary concern in the relationship, safety. The second is transparency and trustworthiness of the people in charge. That means that if you're the principal of the school, I have to know that you're trustworthy for me to feel safe. I have to know that what you're doing is predictable, is reasonable, and I can see what you're doing. There aren't any secrets. That way, as a student, as a parent, as a teacher, you've created a more trauma-informed environment by creating safety and transparency and trustworthiness. The third step that the Wisconsin Department of Health Services describes in their treatment-informed care is choice. I'm not forced to do what I do. I choose to do what I do. And we'll talk about that in more detail in another video. But specifically, if you create a school environment where children feel they get to choose those things that are appropriate to be chosen, they feel safer. It reduces their trauma. It increases your trustworthiness and transparency and makes the whole environment more safe. One of the problems with the way America runs its prison system is that you have to force people to comply 24/7 while they're in that prison, which makes the prison a very unsafe place to be because people feel forced, unsafe, insecure, even though they're surrounded by rules and compliance, and this is what you must do, this is what he must do. You don't know what's going to happen next because there's no choice involved. You can't see people choosing what they do. And so prisons are probably the most unsafe place to be. Collaboration and mutuality between the people in charge and the people who are running a place, who are part of the place, who are the clients, the students, the customers. It's that collaboration and the mutual agreement that why we're here is another part of trauma-informed treatment. And you can see this working really well in schools where the teachers and the students will agree together on what's important to learn, what kinds of projects to use in order to learn that, and how the children work together in teams, because that collaboration between peers and among them and their teachers is a big part of what reduces trauma and improves the way they feel about themselves and their world. And finally, empowerment. When you work with a person who feels disempowered, they don't feel safe, they feel less than, and they're not going to do work to the best of their ability. Why would they? So if you're going to create a trauma-informed environment, you start with creating safety, being transparent and trustworthy yourself, giving people around you choice wherever choice is appropriate, collaborating and being mutual in the decisions that you make, and empowering those people who are not in charge to do those things within the limits of that organization they could possibly do. If you are the person in charge of Amazon at the very, very top, what do you care if the guy running the forklift goes around clockwise versus counterclockwise to get to the other side of the warehouse to pick up the package? The person driving that forklift knows from experience the best way to get to that package. What you at the very top care about is that the package is delivered where it needs to be. What the guy in the forklift cares about is that it's done efficiently in his eyes in a way that he understands and that he has control over and is safe for him, that he's part of that decision, and that we will not be changing the rules as we go along arbitrarily, that we understand that he's part of the team making the best decisions to deliver that package in the best possible way. And that example can be applied to nearly every experience. Imagine being a parent where you and your kids decide together that the best way to run the house is to be in at 9 o'clock. And they do it because that's their choice. And they had the power to negotiate that 9 o'clock curfew. That's a home that would be a lot less traumatic, a lot safer, a lot more comfortable. And people would feel like that's a place they want to be.